Quantitative literacy, math 1111. This is our first lesson of the year, many to follow. And yes, that's my wife and I's dog, Ducky. He's a mini Australian Shepherd. He's quite the intense pup. And with intensity, we take this course on and we look forward. What is quantitative literacy? Well, this is what we're hoping to get out of it. Quantitative means having to do with a quantity, a numerical value. Quantitative literacy is all about being functional in the quantitative parts of the world and your teaching career. For those who are considering a teaching career, a primary concern is that you pass PRAXIS. So I fully intend for this course to help you overcome any problems with PRAXIS, to make sure everybody passes. By the way, you want a leg up on a future teaching job? Get a foreign language certificate. In New York, they call it a TESOL. Not sure about New Jersey or the other states. My youngest son, Jimmy, he has a teaching degree in history, social studies. And in our school that we were at, that I taught at Patchogue Medford on Long Island, the superintendent once said to me that if Jimmy could get a TESOL stamp on his teaching degree, he would guarantee him a job. At the very worst, this foreign language fluent. It doesn't have to be a major in a foreign language. Just the fact that you're fluent in it, that you can do the basics in the language, will catapult you to the top of the resume application list, and you will get interviews. Now, I don't know about all of the states, but I know in New York, they have a mandate now that a certain percent of the teaching staff has to be foreign language fluent, because in New York, there are a lot of foreign language students coming into the school districts. So likewise, I would strongly suggest looking to add that to your degree, and then also a strong math background, quantitative literacy 1111, and even a little bit further than that. You know what the Common Core tests are. You know that school districts are responsible for doing their part to show improvement on these tests, and one of the big tests is mathematics. And if a school district can hire someone who has a strong math background to help their students do better on that test, the districts will be all over it. I mean, who would you hire if you were the district? Would you hire somebody who is able to speak to all of the students in the district and has a background in one of the two content areas on the Common Core test, primary content areas? Or would you go out and hire somebody who does not have a background in those things? I think it's a pretty straightforward understanding. I hope to give you a better perspective on what math is really about and what it is most definitely not about. As a student in class, I absolutely hated when teachers would come in and say, this is the rule, just do it because I said to. I hated it. It needed to make sense to me. There had to be a reason to follow up on this. And I definitely found it. So I don't intend to parrot or be a robotic teacher. And I hope that you don't want to be that either, because I have a feeling that leads to struggles and difficulties for most teachers. And then the last thing is a way to structure your lessons that you teach, both within the single lesson and also groups of lessons for a course. A winning way to go about your business. It'll help you in your career, but more importantly, it'll help your students succeed and do what it is they want to do. So that's what I'm hoping to get out of this particular course. One of the things that we'll set every day is an agenda for today and every class. And ours are basically going to be broken down into 4 different areas. Praxis prep, review material, and by that I mean review of recent lessons, so that we constantly spiral and go back to it. I don't believe most students learn things the first time they see them. I think that they get a good beginning of an understanding the first time they see them. But the more they cycle back to it, the better they get. I like to look at my own weaknesses, and one thing that I'm not particularly good at is mechanics necessarily, and I needed to try it and make some mistakes and then be shown what I did that was wrong and why it was wrong, and then I would come back and try it again, and sometimes I could get it right, and Lord knows sometimes it took 4, 5, 6 attempts to be able to finally get it down pat and to understand it. And you know what? I like to look at it as kids who come into my class, that's how they are with math. So I want to constantly cycle back and come back to it. And even if you think you've got it after the second or third time, there's a way to go deeper usually. And with that depth of understanding, you need to see it again to get that down pat. Then whatever the topics are of the day are that we're going to talk about, and then some classwork contemplations. So that's our general format for class structure each day. A praxis prep is very important to me. First off, you can invest all of your time, all of your money, and all of your effort into trying to become a teacher, but it's my understanding that if you don't pass this praxis test, you're not going to have much of a future in the teaching career. So we want to make sure that you pass this test. So we're going to spend some time dedicated to that each and every single lesson. Not a lot of time, just enough. And not so much the math that's on the test. That'll kind of come through the course. But what we're looking at really is trying to get you to be test wise. I coached wrestling for over 30 years, and we had a term in wrestling called match savvy. And here's a really simple explanation of the term. In wrestling, you try to get a thing called a takedown. And if you try to take the guy down, usually you do that with what you call a shot. If you do that in the middle of the mat, in that little circle in the middle of a wrestling mat, you have lots of room to finish the takedown. But if you get drawn to the edge of the mat and you shoot near the edge and that shot takes you out of bounds, you can't finish the takedown. But your opponent, if he should shoot when his back is to the edge of the mat, then he's got that whole huge circle to finish his move. So his move could be worse than yours, but because he has all the room in the world to finish it, he has a much better chance of succeeding than you do when you have no room to finish yours. So we would always tell our guys, circle your back to the edge of the mat as soon as they came close to it. Likewise, there are certain test-taking strategies that can help you on the praxis exam. They're not necessarily deep math strategies. It's test savvy. It's understanding how to take a test. And we're going to give you lots of opportunities to learn some test savvy, both with topics and ways to simplify things and look at questions to help you do better. Okay, so today's praxis work that we're going to do will involve solving equations, test-taking strategies, a brief review of the Pythagorean theorem, the area of a polygon, and the importance of drawing diagrams. So here is our first question for today. It's not meant to be a complicated question, and I've never taken a praxis in my life, but I did go online and look up a lot of questions, and the questions that I got are from my online sources. So this was a question on your praxis exam, a past praxis exam, and I said to myself, man, there is no way in the world a student should ever miss this question. So give it a shot. I should tell you too, on these videos, I do a thing called stop and start, or you should do a thing called stop and start. What you're going to do is you see what the question is, and then you stop the video. On a separate piece of paper, you do the question, and then you start the video. Meanwhile, I'm not going to be pausing at all. I'm going to pause maybe 10 seconds. Sometimes I get a sip of water or I munch on something. And then I get going right into what the answer is so that you can go through these at your own pace. We'll use a math term here. Students of 1 might turn around and take 2 seconds to do this question. And students of 2 might take 42 seconds to do this question. But the bottom line is they can both restart the video when they're ready. So it allows you to work and proceed at your own pace. So time for you to stop the video, start it up when you're done. We call that stop and start. Okay, so first off, the proper way to do this. The correct answer is negative 63. And you should never, I mean never, miss a question like this that has an equation and solutions as choices. Here's the proper technique. 15 minus x is 78. Now, there is a trick built into this question, a reason that it can be difficult. First, I think everybody should understand, what kind of 15 is this? Well, it's positive. It is not negative. This is a positive 15. How do you tell the difference between Mr. Lindquist and Mrs. Lindquist? Really simple. You look in front of the name Lindquist. If you see Mrs., you're talking about my wife, the lady Lindquist. And if you see Mr., you're talking about the man, Mr. Lindquist. Well, if you see this 15 right here in the solutions, you peek in front to see what kind of 15 that is. It's a positive 15. What's the opposite of a positive 15? It is a negative 15. Now, why is that important? it's important that you understand that this negative sign here has absolutely nothing to do with the 15. It has everything to do with the x. So I start by subtracting 15 from both sides, and now the great Steve Irwin, who used to be on Animal Planet, and he was kind of crazy, he was an Australian guy, and he'd pick up like some rattlesnake and he'd go, danger, danger, danger. This is the second most deadly type of snake in the whole world. One little bite from this beauty, you're a goner. Likewise, this is the second most deadly math equation in the whole world. One little bite from this beauty, you're a goner. See, this is a negative x. It's not a positive x. So when I take away the 15 from both sides and I didn't touch this negative x, that's what comes down, a negative x. 78 minus 15 is 63. Then I divide both sides by -1 because I got to get rid of that negative sign. And when I divide by -1, I get x is equal to -63. Now, that's the proper techniques for this, okay? And like I said, it is pretty tricky because I think a lot of students are going to get the first answer of 63 and notice it's the first answer to get students to jump at it right away. We call it a distractor. Now, the reason you should never ever miss this question is because you can just check the choices. Check it out. I could plug in the 63, and if I check it, 15 minus 63 is -48. No, it does not work. So I take the 63 and I plug it in here for the x. Likewise, I do the 5.2. That doesn't check either. Then I do the -93, and 15 minus -93 is 108. Okay. I believe, are allowed to use a calculator on most parts of the praxis, maybe all of them. If not, remember that when you subtract the negative, you're adding. So 15 and 93 is 108, so that's not true. And 15 minus 93, that's -78, not +78, so that's not true. So if you didn't have any idea how to do the question, and you will probably come across equations this year that you have no idea how to do, if you just substitute the choices, then one of them will check, one of the possible answers, and you know that's your solution. 15 minus -63, well, that checks. That's 78 equals 78, yes. So without even having to know how to do this, you can get the question right every single time. So here are 3 equations for you to do, and each one has one correct answer. The last one is a quadratic, which you may or may not remember how to do. Do your best. Worst comes to worst, put in your choices. Go ahead. Okay, so in the first case, the correct answer is 8. And all I'm doing here is checking them, okay? If I substitute an 8 in for x, 4 times 8 is -32. -4 times 8, I should say. And 17 and -32 make -15. On the second question, the correct answer is -11. Substituting in that -11. 5 times -11 is -55. Plus 9 is -46. -55 and 9 make -46. So that's the correct answer. And for the next one, the correct answer is also B. Now, if you were to check any of these choices that were not the correct answer, they would not check. Okay? So here's an example of how it checks. When you square something, you should put it in parentheses, particularly if, like me, you use the Texas Instruments TI-84 Plus calculator. A good scientific calculator or graphing calculator, if you put in just -7 squared, it'll tell you -49, and it's not -49, it's positive, because the calculator is interpreting it to say the negative of 7 squared. It's not interpreting it square -7. To tell it to square -7, you must put it in parentheses. So that gives you 49, and then 4 times -7 is -28, and -21, that adds up to 0. That works. And likewise with the 3. 3 squared is 9, 4 times 3 is 12, 9 and 12 make 21. -21 is 0. So you can always just check. Pretty straightforward on that. Okay, we'll stop at this point. This is the first of the praxis review. We'll continue the praxis review in a second.